An approach that includes a healthy diet, physical activity, adequate sleep, and mentally and socially stimulating activities is more important for preserving the cognitive health with age than any other intervention. Staying physically active throughout life is critical for maintaining healthy cognitive function. Exercise has been linked to slower rates of age-related brain atrophy in areas of the brain that are involved in cognitive decline, and being physically active in midlife is associated with slower cognitive decline and a reduced risk of cognitive impairment and dementia later in life. Preclinical research suggests that exercise can stimulate the production of growth factors like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and this promotes neuroplasticity. Exercise also improves cerebrovascular function, supports the formation of new blood vessels in the brain, and it increases blood flow. A large body of evidence indicates any type and amount of physical activity is better than none when it comes to cognitive health. It's clear that both aerobic exercise and strength training can prevent or delay cognitive decline in older adults, regardless of their current cognitive status. Even seated exercises have cognitive benefits for older people who are unable to exercise upright. Interestingly, preclinical research shows cognitive benefits of exercise might be transferable through the administration of circulating blood factors. In a study on aged mice, the plasma from exercise mice was administered to sedentary mice. The exercise mice underwent increased neurogenesis, higher expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and improved learning and memory. And the sedentary mice who were receiving the plasma from the exercise mice also experienced the same benefits. The researchers discovered a specific blood factor derived from the liver, glycophosphatidylinositol specific phosphatidylipase, or GPLD1, increased after exercise, and it correlated with the improved cognitive function in the mice. The concentrations of the GPLD1 are also increased in active, healthy elderly humans. When GPLD1 was overexpressed in the aged mouse livers, the mice experienced the same improvements in neurogenesis and cognitive function. The study provides hope that the cognitive benefits of physical activity may someday be possible even for those who are unable to exercise. Engaging in activities that are mentally stimulating has been shown in numerous studies to be important for cognitive health during all stages of life. It's thought that education and other forms of mental stimulation build the cognitive reserves, which are the brain's ability to use alternative neuronal pathways to accomplish the cognitive tasks. Having greater cognitive reserves can delay the onset of the symptoms related to aging and the pathological changes in the brain. Higher education level and bilingualism over a lifetime have protective effects on the cognitive function, and early research suggests educational pursuits and language acquisition, even at older ages, can still benefit some aspects of your cognition. A meta-analysis of studies found music practice is associated with the preservation of a variety of aspects of cognitive function, including those affected by aging. The effect is strongest in those with long-term music training, but it's also observed after short-term musical training later in life. Mentally stimulating leisure activity has been linked to cognitive benefits in multiple studies. For example, in one study in 100 cognitively healthy older adults, long-term jigsaw puzzlers were found to have higher function in all aspects of cognitive ability that was examined. There's some evidence that doing Sudoku and crossword puzzles can benefit the aging brain. A study in 16,572 participants, aged 65 to 100 years, found higher frequency of engagement in word or number games was associated with better cognitive performance on tests of memory, numeracy, and verbal fluency, both at baseline and after 2 years. Even those who began playing word or number games after the beginning of the study demonstrated better cognitive function by the end of the study than those who didn't play word or number games regularly. The effect was equally strong in participants of all ages, and it was more pronounced in those with a lower level of education. Another study found activities such as computer use, crossword puzzles, handcrafts, and education courses were associated with reduced cognitive decline over 1 year. Early research suggests that mentally stimulating computerized programs can also be useful for improving cognitive performance in patients with mild cognitive impairment and dementia. Chronic stress, anxiety, depression, and sleep disturbances are often interrelated. These conditions have well-established detrimental effects on brain structure and function, and they're associated with an increased risk of dementia. Stress reduction techniques like meditation and yoga might have a role in slowing age-related cognitive decline and preventing cognitive impairment. Mindfulness meditation, for example, has consistently been found to positively affect the brain structure, function and plasticity, including in regions of the brain that are associated with cognitive dysfunction. Long-term yoga practitioners have been found to be less likely to have age-related brain atrophy, and they perform better on some cognitive tests when compared to those who are not practicing yoga. Other researchers found similar effects in long-term meditators. Looking at the cognitive function in subjects with a wide age range, one study determined the long-term yoga practitioners and the meditators had slower cognitive decline and more resilient neuronal networks than those with neither practice. Preliminary studies have indicated meditation practices can improve memory, attention, and executive function in older adults, and it might mitigate the age-related cognitive decline. Mindful movement therapies like Tai Chi, yoga, and walking meditation also have positive effects on the quality of life, mood, and cognitive function. In one randomized control trial in 118 participants with an average age of 62, an 8-week Hatha yoga program involving postures, breathing, and meditation exercises improved performance on tests of attention and on information processing speed. Social engagement, like physical and mental activity, might be an important mediator of healthy brain function throughout your life. A growing number of studies indicate the high social engagement and strong social networks are correlated with reduced age-related cognitive decline, mild cognitive impairment, and dementia. On the other hand, progressive loss of cognitive function, as well as physical function, can lead to a diminished strength of social networks and increased isolation, contributing to further cognitive losses. Strong social networks have been correlated with better cognitive function in older adults, and it reduced the likelihood of experiencing anxiety and depression symptoms in those with mild cognitive impairment. One study found cognitive decline in older men and women over an 8-year period was mitigated by regular engagement in social activities, regardless of the cognitive status at the beginning of the study. Similarly, social engagement was correlated with slower cognitive decline in 543 cognitively healthy 67-year-old participants who were monitored for 8 years. Volunteering was identified in one study as a particular predictor of cognitive resiliency with aging, and this might be due in part to the combined social and cognitive aspects of many volunteer activities. Participating in group social activities might become more important to cognitive health at an older age. Even in the very old, social engagement appears to be beneficial. Participation in art, craft, and social activities were all noted as being protective against mild cognitive impairment in a group of 256 people aged 85 and older, who were cognitively normal at the beginning of the study and were monitored for approximately 4 years. Sleep is critical for the brain to rest and repair, and both acute and chronic sleep disturbances have measurable negative impacts on physical, emotional, and cognitive health. Long-term sleep deprivation and chronic sleep restriction, or fragmentation, damages the neuronal function, and it contributes to stress, mood symptoms, and cognitive dysfunction. In healthy older adults, subjective cognitive symptoms are reported more often in those who also report sleep disturbances. Aging is naturally associated with a diminished sleep quality and quantity, and this might influence the cognitive function by disrupting the circadian rhythm and the stress hormone signaling, and promoting systemic inflammation, metabolic disturbances, and fat deposition. Furthermore, poor sleep might influence cognition through epigenetic changes that affect neuroplasticity. According to large meta-analyses of research into this relationship, the optimum amount of sleep for healthy cognitive function appears to be 7 to 8 hours per night, with both shorter and long sleep duration associated with increased risk of cognitive decline, mild cognitive impairment, and dementia. Sufficient daily activity and nighttime environment that promotes sleep might help older people who are struggling with sleep disorders. Strategies have demonstrated some effectiveness, including daytime activities, because too little or too much activity during the day can contribute to sleep problems at night. Maintaining a balanced schedule of daily activities and engagement can help to prevent daytime napping and facilitate better nighttime sleep. Mind-body therapies and meditation promote relaxation, and they might increase the time asleep. Cognitive behavior therapy interventions for insomnia focus on reframing the negative thought patterns around sleep. Use of a device that improves the sleep environment, like earplugs, an eye mask, white noise machine, weighted blanket, and devices that play sleep-inducing music, have all demonstrated some effectiveness in reducing sleep disturbance. Bright light therapy might increase the daytime activity, reduce daytime napping, and reset the circadian clock, thereby assisting in restoring the normal sleep patterns. Obstructive sleep apnea is a common form of sleep-disordered breathing, and it's characterized by periodic episodes of complete or partial airway closure, and it results in lack of breathing or insufficient breathing during sleep. Falling blood levels of oxygen and rising levels of carbon dioxide as a result of the apnea can cause brain arousal, and this can trigger the resumption of sufficient breathing. Frequently cycling between apnea and arousal causes sleep fragmentation that, when chronic, can lead to disrupted circadian signaling, dysregulation of the stress response, systemic inflammation, and increased oxidative stress. Obstructive sleep apnea can be a major contributing factor in metabolic and cardiovascular disease, as well as cognitive dysfunction. The relationship between obstructive sleep apnea and cognitive decline, mild cognitive impairment, and dementia has been observed in numerous studies. According to a large meta-analysis that included 14 studies with over 4 million participants, sleep-disordered breathing is associated with a 26% increased likelihood of developing cognitive impairment. A growing body of evidence suggests the treatment of sleep apnea with continuous positive airway pressure can reduce sleep apnea-related cognitive decline. An eating pattern based on the traditional Mediterranean diet has been shown to have anti-aging effects on the brain, cardiovascular and metabolic function, and the overall longevity. Findings from a variety of studies suggest eating a Mediterranean-style diet can slow cognitive decline and might reduce the risk of dementia. With its emphasis on fruits, vegetables, unrefined whole grains, legumes and extra virgin olive oil, as well as moderate amounts of seafood, fermented dairy products and red wine with meals, the traditional Mediterranean diet provides ample amounts of critical nutrients such as mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids, antioxidants, vitamins, minerals and phytonutrients. It can be used as a template that can be adapted to favour local and seasonal availability of specific foods. A study including 832 participants, examined every 2 to 3 years for up to 18 years, found those whose diets most closely reflected a Mediterranean diet experienced significantly less cognitive decline than those whose diets least reflected a Mediterranean diet. A study based on data collected over 16 years from 27,842 men participating in the Health Professionals Follow-up Study found those whose diet was most Mediterranean-like were 36% less likely to report poor subjective cognitive function than those whose diet was the least Mediterranean-like. Examining the brains of cognitively normal, older-age subjects has revealed adherence to the Mediterranean-like dietary pattern is associated with reduced beta-amyloid plaque accumulation. The components of the diet most closely linked to this effect were the high fruit and vegetable consumption and the moderate wine consumption. While it appears the combination of the eating habits comprising the Mediterranean diet is key to its efficacy, the high consumption of extra virgin olive oil featured in the diet is thought to be an important reason for its protective effect on cognition. Several preclinical studies indicate the polyphenols in the extra virgin olive oil can reduce the beta-amyloid and tau accumulation and toxicity and might modulate microRNA profiles. In one clinical trial in 285 older adults, it compared 3 diets. The Mediterranean diet supplemented with as much as 1 litre per week of extra virgin olive oil. A Mediterranean diet including 30 grams per day of mixed nuts, and a low-fat diet. And after 6.5 years, the olive oil supplemented group had better cognitive performance than the other 2 groups. Numerous preclinical and clinical studies have examined the potential for drinking coffee to help to prevent cognitive decline. Caffeine and coffee are recognized to improve the short-term memory and cognition, and some research indicates the long-term coffee consumption could protect against dementia and cognitive decline. Furthermore, preclinical models have demonstrated plausible biological mechanisms for bioactive components in coffee to be neuroprotective. For instance, in a 3-year study in 145 cognitively healthy elderly participants, moderate to heavy coffee drinking was linked to reduced cognitive decline, as well as better preservation of brain white matter and cerebral blood flow. Similarly, an analysis of 11 prospective studies have found the highest levels of coffee consumption were associated with a 27% lower risk of Alzheimer's disease. However, some studies have found smaller amounts also appear to have protective cognitive function. An analysis of 9 prospective studies concluded the optimal protection resulted from 1 to 2 cups of coffee per day, while other studies suggest coffee's effects on cognition and the brain are complex and require further study. Caloric restriction, a dietary intervention where the calorie intake is reduced but adequate nutrient intake is preserved, has been shown to delay the onset of age-related diseases and to extend lifespan in many organisms. This effect is thought to be due to a triggering of the resilience mechanism that enhances cellular resistance to stress. This effect is known as hormesis. In rodent models, calorie restriction was associated with decreased neural stem cell senescence, increased neuroplasticity, and better cognitive performance. Specifically, calorie restriction has been found in animal models to stimulate neural stem cell activity, promote normal metabolism of phospholipids needed for myelin production, lower stress reactivity and stress-related changes in brain structure, and induce epigenetic changes that support youthful gene expression in aging brains. Some of the same metabolic and molecular changes and health benefits associated with calorie restriction in animals have also been demonstrated in humans engaging in a 25% calorie restriction or through an intermittent fasting strategy combined with physical activity. Celiac disease is a chronic condition and it's caused by an autoimmune response to gluten, a protein that's found primarily in wheat. Patients with celiac disease typically have a high degree of systemic and gastrointestinal inflammation, as well as a marked imbalance of gut microorganisms. This is known as dysbiosis. It's estimated 10% of celiac disease patients also experience neurological symptoms related to the condition, like headaches, lack of muscle coordination, numbness or tingling in the extremities, depression and cognitive impairment, ranging from mild reversible cognitive symptoms like brain fog to permanent neurological brain damage and dementia. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity is a gastrointestinal disorder and it's caused by an inflammatory reaction to gluten, and it does not appear to involve antibodies, It can lead to similar consequences as celiac disease, including gut and systemic inflammation and dysbiosis, potentially leading to neuroinflammation and cognitive symptoms. In older individuals, neurological manifestations of celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity are frequently attributed to the age-related cognitive decline, or misdiagnosed as cognitive impairment or even Alzheimer's disease. Yet, with accurate diagnosis and implementation of a gluten-free diet, these symptoms can often resolve. For more on age-related cognitive decline, or on herbs, supplements and natural treatment plans, check out my website.